Welcome, Darren, to Metallarium Pages. It's a great pleasure to talk with you about Benediction, this new album, Ravage of Empires, and more things related to the metal world in general. So we'll start by asking, how are you doing today? How is the band on the last couple years? Because your previous album was released in 2020 at the time of the pandemic, and now we are out from that pandemic.
Yeah, it's much better now. I mean, the album came out last month, and we started a European tour on the day that it came out, which obviously we couldn't do before. We couldn't do last time, so it was completely different. You know, we've been out mixing with the kids and showing the new product out to everybody, and so far so good. It's back to normal, I think.
Okay. So, and when do you decide to compose songs for this new Ravage of Empires? It was during the seasons or the pandemic, or it was during for example, there's some songs left from the scriptures. Who knows? When do you decide to start run songs for this one?
It's a bit of everything. I have a catalogue of riffs upstairs, and this because Rui lives, you know, an hour away from me, and the singer lives in Copenhagen, the drummer lives in Italy. It's impossible for us to get to rehearsal. So this is how we write. Rui sends me a bunch of riffs, and I have a whole catalogue upstairs in my music room of riffs. So some of the riffs are 1 year old, some of the riffs are 10 years old. So I just call on them, and that's how I write the songs. I pick the ingredients, and then I bake the cake. So some of these songs have been written for years. Some of them, you know, were brand new.
Oh, okay. And other detail about this new album is that your second album from your comeback since 2020. So how it was the reception for this new album? Talking about the reviews,
Fantastic.
talking about the people, etc.
Yeah, fantastic. The reviews have been fantastic. We've got best metal album of the month in many magazines. We just got into the German album charts, proper album charts, not metal album charts. So that was a big achievement. It's been received really well, and you know, considering we had to follow scriptures, which could have been difficult to do, we're pleased with the results.
Okay, okay. Okay, and now I as I said, this is the second album since your comeback with the Golden Line, with you, with the other guitar, and obviously with the vocals in the band. So how is in this case how is now the band with the new songs with the new band after two albums? So do you think that you are in the best in the best era for Benediction?
Yes, I think we are. Yeah. I mean, Dave's been back with us now for, you know, maybe 5 years. I think he was only with us for maybe 6 or 7 years originally. So he's been with us pretty much the same amount of time. But yeah, it feels good. It feels natural. You know, me and Rui write all the music, but Dave puts the lyrics exactly where we would expect the lyrics to go. So it's a good working threesome. You know, we all work together well. So it feels natural. It feels new. It feels old. It feels everything it's supposed to be.
Okay. And now, usually, that's a common question on this one. So usually, the band when releasing a new album, the last album is the best effort to date. But according to the fans, is different because the fans sticks with the old ones for the first three albums. So for you, if this new album, Ravage of the Empires, is the best work to date, so why do you consider this album the best work to date, or do you consider another one as the best work to date from Benediction?
No. This for me is definitely the best work. Your last piece should always be your best work. I'm not a believer in putting out an album with 3 good songs and then, you know, 6 or 7 album fillers. We wait until we've got 10 or 11 tracks that we're really happy with. But the good thing about Benediction is we don't change much. We're not reinventing the wheel. We're not putting up trees. We don't want to be the next big thing. We've already invented death metal, so we don't need to do it again. And because our music doesn't change so much, it means that the new material fits right alongside the old material. You know, you don't play stuff from one album and then stuff from another album. It sounds completely different. It all sounds kind of the same. We kind of trying to keep the same kind of vibe, same kind of feeling, because there's not many bands that sound like Benediction. And we're quite happy with that. We're quite happy sounding slightly different, but we believe in what we do. So.
Yes, that is true. That is true. No, well, according to my experience, was just hearing a lot of music. Just I never hear a band sounds like Benediction. You are unique in the world. That's a
Yes,
good.
I think so. Yeah, I think, and we quite like that. We've never been one to follow the rules. You know, we don't put blast beats in because everybody else says, you know, put a blast beat in. We don't get a keyboard in because everyone says put keyboard in. We don't want to do that. We're old school. We're typically old school. 5 people doing punk metal music. It's as simple as that. We're not going to change. We haven't changed in 35 years, so don't expect changes now.
Yeah, that is correct. That is correct. And one thing that you said it about this, because all the time when I hear for the first time Benediction was Subconscious Terror to this new album, all the time you said it. You never put a blast beats. You never put like the harsh voices. All the time the growls are heavy, not like nor no a different kind of growls in this one. So why do you decide all the time just not to put? And in the future, will you include this kind of new techniques into death metal, the blast
No,
beat?
I don't think we have any intention of changing. At the end of the day, we're the guys that have to stand up on stage and play this night after night after night. And I've played many festivals where the three bands before us, the two bands after us, all sound exactly the same. 45 minutes, all blast beats, and there's no difference, you know. So the ears just they just switch off. We like to put a bit of groove. We like to put a bit of feeling into the song. We like to put a bit of fast, bit of slow, bit high tempo, bit slow tempo, a bit doomy, bit speedy. We want to mix it up a little bit. The slow riffs sound better with a fast riff either side of it, and vice versa. A fast riff sounds better with a slow riff. So we like to pick the crowd up and drop them down, and in and out and in and out, rather than just one pace. And because your ears become accustomed to it, and then you end up not listening.
Well, well. That is true. That is true. There's mostly all bands now play so perfect, so amazing. Especially in the studio when you hear a new band. These musicians are amazing. This record is amazing. Sounds perfectly. There are no errors on this one. And for
Yeah.
this, as you play in a lot of festivals, as you can see, a lot of new bands in these festivals. What's your opinion about now the standardization of the sound, especially in the extreme music? Because when you hear now a record, you can see the record sounds amazing, perfect, great musician, etc., etc., great cover art, etc. But as you compare, because I was there in the 90s, hearing a lot of bands, there is 10 or 20 bands at that moment, but these 10 or 20 bands, just 5 or 6 sounds amazing. The other albums didn't sound amazing at that moment. But now it's different. We have 20 albums, but the 10, 20 albums sound amazing, a great musician, etc., etc. And now you come from that era that were some mistakes, that where you're learning the instrument, you are playing the first way of death metal, etc. And now there's 1,000 great musicians, 1,000 great records. So what's your opinion about now this standardization of the sound, especially into the extreme music?
I think it's good that it's moved on, but I'm also a firm believer a good musician doesn't make a good songwriter. Some of the best musicians that I know can't write a tune for shit.
Mm.
And on the other side of the coin, some bang average players, which I guess me and Rui are. We're not whiz-o guitar players, but I think we write good tunes. So there has to be a balance between the two, and it's the same with the sound. You have to get a crunchy, modern sound, but you have to make it feel old as well. If it sounds too processed, it sounds too perfect. It doesn't sound natural. It doesn't sound real. So there's a balance with both. There's a balance with the music writing, and there's a balance with the recording. And I think you have to get it right. I'm all for moving forward, but you have to keep the element of true death metal within the middle of it. You have to.
Okay, okay. And when this topic about now and returning to your albums in general, so mostly people thinks that the Transcendence to Rubicon is the best work today because I was there. I really love that album. So if by any case, so but for you, as you define your career, for you, which is the biggest stone in your career? It was Transcendent to Rubicon because for another musicians thinks that the first album is the big stone in the career because it started the band at that moment without all the inconvenience, but you started the band. So for you, what in creating your sound, creating your movement, in to create a band for you, which was the biggest stone in all your more than 8 albums?
I guess you're probably right. The one that put us on the map was Transcend the Rubicon, definitely. But every one of them has been important. Subconscious Terror was important because it first got us the deal.
Mhm.
Grand Leveler was important because we lost Barney, and it could have been the end. But we got Dave Ingram in, and that was a good step. Stuff like Grindbastard. Grindbastard was important because meeting Andy Sneap and getting on board with Andy Sneap and the whole production side of it. Scriptures was good because we got Dave back. So they've all been very, very different stepping stones. But every long walk starts with one simple step, and every step has been super important to us. But yeah, if you're looking at a trajectory, I guess Transcend the Rubicon would be the best one. However, I think Scriptures on this new album have put us onto a new level, onto the next level. So it's all good.
Okay, okay, okay. And also, when this topic, I remember when I was reading a lot of your biography about the band. I remember when Subconscious Terrors went out at that moment, and you played that album with with Mark from Napalm Death now or Napalm Death at that moment. So and then when you have a gig with a full tour gig at that moment, Mark retired and entered Dave to play. So how the things going at that moment? Because is there I am trying to find some shows with Mark from that era on YouTube, and I cannot find it because there's a few of them. Because Mark decide to leave the band to enter Napalm Death and then to enter. So how it was at that moment this transition? Because you are releasing a new album, Mark let retire to enter Napalm Death, and Dave is entered the band because I think it was like the very complicated times at that moment when you try to find a different vocals and try to practice, learning, rehearsal. So how was it that moment at that moment?
Yeah, it's quite difficult. I mean, it could have it could have easily derailed us because when we've just started out, Subconscious Terror had just come out, but death metal's only just emerging, so it could have put us right back. But we were young kids, so we were eager to carry on. We put adverts in all the papers and all the rehearsal studios around Birmingham, and it didn't take us long to find Dave really. So it was quite a smooth transition. It could have broken a lot of bands up, but it didn't. And Dave fitted in superbly well straight away, as he did the second time around. So it wasn't actually that difficult.
Okay, okay. Now talking about more about the promotion, more about these new scripters, or sorry, for Ravage of the Empires. So what kind of plans do you have? I saw that you were in a tour and a full tour since, and you ended this last tour like the 3 days ago, 4 days
Yeah,
ago about this one. And what
yeah.
kind of promotion more do you have? Perhaps you will embark in tours, you present more videos. What kind of promotion? Perhaps you return to Latin America. Who knows?
Yes, we will return to Latin America for the foreseeable future. This season we'll be doing the European festivals as usual. We go to North America next month for a few gigs, and then Maryland Death Fest. We come back to Europe and do festivals, Wacken and various other festivals. And then next year, the plan is to come to Asia and Australia, and to come back to Latin America. But that will all be next year. But whether the gig is down the road or it's the other side of the world, it doesn't matter to me. It doesn't matter whether there's 50 people there or 50,000. I just love playing gigs. So the more gigs we get, the better.
Okay. Okay. Now talking about your last tour here in Latin America, it was when everything is completely normal there, here. So how was your experience to return here after the pandemic, after a new album, and present all records, obviously, and also present the golden lineup with you, Dave, because the first time that you came here, it was with another Dave from Anal and Track, and now you
Yeah.
came for the golden era or for golden lineup, that Benediction. It was your presentation in this recently last tour, like 3 years ago or 4 years ago? I can remember very well, but I was there.
Yeah.
I was there. So
Yeah,
how
it
it
was
was?
awesome. Yeah, some of the gigs were incredibly big as well. Some arena gigs and festival gigs, some smaller gigs. But yeah, the reaction to Dave coming back has been fantastic. I mean, there was no problem with Dave Hunt. Everything was good with Dave Hunt. But like you say, to get the three of us back together, me, Rui, and Dave, has gone down really well worldwide, not just in Latin America, for the whole world. Everywhere we've played, it's like it is almost like we reformed. We broke up and reformed. So which we didn't, by the way. So yeah, it's been kind of cool, but yeah, everything just feels right at the minute. Everything just feels good. Everything just feels easy, feels natural. And the reception everywhere we've gone has been fantastic. Latin America, especially.
Okay, okay, okay. So now talking about one thing that you said, you are playing with a lot of festivals, with a lot of bands during whole your career, and recently there's more bands releasing albums, and also there's more festivals releasing. I don't know, so especially in Europe, and the festival season started like the next month and will end at the end of August or end or something like that. So and for this, when you hear a new band in next to you in this in or before or next to you, these new bands catch your attention? And if this so, which band catch your attention in all these festivals, and you can recommend for the new ones that bring a new sound, that bring a, like the or carry the torch for the death metal? Because now the death metal well, there is a new good bands, but when we related for all and good things is for all the time is from the 90s. Is that the only thing? So for
Yeah.
this, do you recommend some new bands that you see live?
I don't really I don't really follow the new stuff, which sounds arrogant and lazy.
Mhm.
But I'm just too concerned with the old stuff. I still this whole tour that we just did with Jungle Rot and Master was perfect for me because it's old school, it's old bands. I much prefer the older stuff. I
Mhm.
should take more attention to the new stuff, but I just like I say, I'm lazy, so I don't have any recommendations as such. There's so many bands, you know, so many festivals. It's difficult to see every band and remember each band. But I don't think there's anybody stood out specifically. I just like the fact that there are new bands. I like the fact that people are carrying on the death metal. Because when we first started this, we didn't know it was going to last this long. We thought it'd last a few years. People would get pissed off with the vocals and, you know, the scene would die. You know, especially when grunge came and crushed death metal. It could have been really difficult. So I have no specific bands, but I just love the fact that these bands are continuing and are keeping this death metal scene alive because it needs to survive, man.
Okay, yeah, well, yeah, that is true. That is true. Another thing that I didn't noted, because in the 90s, England has a great bands, Tower, Benediction, Cancer, Carcass, etc., etc. But now recently, the death metal in England doesn't have any main great bands. Doesn't have all the times you remember the great bands for the 90s in British. But when you're talking about from the Finland or talking about the Swedish, there's new bands like Bloodbath from Swedish is a great band from there, or other bands from Finland is carry the torch, but in a great sense. So for you, what's going on at that moment right now in England that they never provided again a huge stones like you, like Bolt Thrower, like Carcass, Cancer, etc.
I would suggest that that's down to the press. I
Mm-hmm.
think in countries in areas like Latin America or in like Central Europe and Germany, people listen to themselves. So if they hear a band, they like a band. In England, people tend to listen to press. So if the press are not giving death metal a good run, people are not interested. If press want to talk about boy bands, everyone follows boy bands. It's fucking ridiculous in this country. So there's too many sheep. People follow the rules. They follow what the magazines say. And because we're not getting so much press now, then the new bands are finding it more difficult to get through. But there is a resurgence in gigs. I am finding in England there's a lot more small homemade gigs like it was back in the day in the late 80s. So I'm kind of hoping that there's another underground movement starting in England because that's the only way that's going to happen in this country. Because I say the press rule people's minds over it, and this country's full of sheep. It's sad. It's very sad.
Mhm, mhm. Okay, okay. So another thing that is right now like a topic in the world is like the AI. As you can see, there's a lot of people using AI for everything, just not for the cover art. And also with this kind of stuff, as you can see, now the people that are helping you to play live are reducing because now mostly all festivals, mostly all producers to cheaper the investment are will be cheaper. There's no hiring personnel, there's no hiring amps, there's playing just with plugins to just obviously that is completely normal. But when you try obviously to cheaper the ways to expand for as a producer, that's completely normal. So now how can you see this new movement that the producers in the live presentations are not using more apps, more amps, are you not using all the stuff, or not using more people to present live
Yeah,
presentation?
I don't like it. I don't like it personally. I'm old school. I want to see an amp. I want to see a valve amp sitting behind me with the valves glowing in the back of the amp. I want to see all that stuff. I want to see people moving around. I want to see a cloth backdrop rather than a video wall. I still just want to see a backdrop. I still want it old school, but unfortunately, the world moves on. You know, I'm nearly 57, so I understand that things are changing. But I don't personally like it. I like the live fit. I like when a band plays live and fucks up because it makes it more real. You know, if you see a show and it's absolutely perfect note for note, you may as well just buy the album. If you want to see it raw and a few of the solos messed up, or someone forgets to come in, Dave forgets a lyric or something, it just makes it more real. And that for me is live music. It doesn't have to be perfect. It has to be from the heart.
Okay, okay, okay. And for this topic, as you said, well, I think like that, the music need to be say more organic in all the ways.
Yeah,
Also,
absolutely, absolutely. Absolutely.
And obviously when we talk about we're returning to the topic of the standardization, because now most people want to play perfect. As you can see, more people focusing now into plays perfect and to play great musician, and forgot the essence of the death metal. Because now when I hear, obviously, I remember one comment about one friend: the death metal from the 90s, all the time it was a punch on the face, all the time it was that. But now,
Absolutely.
with all these kind of bands, this death metal is in a little ways more soft. There's no savage, there's no this kind of like rebel in all ways. So what's your point of even now? The death metal has new bands, has played perfect, but no, they don't have this sense of like there's savage, there's brutal or this kind of stuff.
I personally don't again I don't particularly like it. When we first started off as well back in the 80s, there was also this European American thing. So the European played with heart, the European played like with a punk edge, where the Americans were all dancing across their fretboard and showing how many notes they could do. Well, I think that's taken the next step now. Death metal, for some reason, is all about how fast I can play or how technical I can play. It's no longer about the songs. It's no longer about the groove. It's no longer about the mid-pace hook that gets you and shakes you about and throws you in the pit. It's no longer about that. It's all about technique. And I think music is losing its essence because of that, because it doesn't come from the heart. Everyone's trying to write the fastest song, or everyone's trying to write the most technical song. That doesn't make it a good song. Like I said earlier, a good musician doesn't make a good songwriter. So a songwriter is someone who's got it inside here. He doesn't necessarily know all the arpeggios and skips and all this all along the fretboard. That doesn't interest me. I'm not interested. I much prefer a punk band that does three chords. But a punk band that does three chords picks you up and fucks you over. I much prefer that. And that's my impression of what's happening in death metal. Everyone's too concerned of being too good at musicianship and getting the production bang on right. It's losing all its heart, all its I don't like it. It's just dying for me. It's a shame.
Okay. Another detail that all the time captured my attention since the beginning, it was how the U.S. press said that the death metal was created by possessed, was created by death. But for me, it's not like that because I was in that moment. So I saw that in Poland-born bands, England, Swedish. So the death metal for me, it was more like a common thing around the world, not a specific country, because you find a lot of good bands in the 80s in different parts of the world. So now, what's your opinion about now? All the time, U.S. press try to say, "Hey, the who invented the death metal? It was death." I know that I know that you were a close friends with Chuck in the 90s. I know that,
Yeah.
but now there's passed a lot of time. The press is still considering that the death created death metal, but Bolt Thrower, it was from the 80s, since the stars of the from the stars of the 80s. I remember
Correct.
was from the 80s for 1982 and 1984, before death appears in the world.
Yeah.
So I understand that. So now, what is your point of view now? All this concept that the U.S. press has, that the dead or possessed created the album. Even possessed for me is not a considered death metal band. It's more than thrash
No.
metal band.
That for me just stinks of the average American. The average American thinks that the America's the be all and end all, and everything was invented in America, and everything revolves around America. And the fucking world doesn't evolve around America. Everyone's got a piece to put in. Like you said, it's Swedish. They have a reason to put in their name. The English have a reason to put their name. The Americans, they do. Some of the South American bands, back in the day, there's people from all over the world that made this industry what it is. Nobody has the right to say that they invented it, because what Death did and what Bolt Thrower and Benediction did are completely different sorts of music. They're all in the same genre, but they're completely different. So maybe they invented that side of it. Maybe us and Bolt Thrower invented our side of it. But at the end of the day, we're all under the same blanket. So no one has the right to say they invented it. We all influenced each other, because back in the day, we all used to talk to each other. We were all sending each other cassettes, and we're all discussing it, because it was proper underground then. There was no press, there's no mobile phones, there's no computers. So all of us were all friends and sending our cassettes to each other, and we were all evolving this whole scene together. And whether it came up in America or whether it came up in Europe or whether it came up in Sweden, doesn't matter. No one has the right to claim it. We're all part of that.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that is true. That for me, it is the same for me because all has, and that's a good thing for the 90s. When I hear a lot like 20 bands, these 20 bands sounds different. Now it's very different. Now you have 20 bands sounds the same as the
Yeah,
bands for the
yeah,
90s. And one thing about this concept about this, all the time I saw that the Jeff from Possess all the time said that he invented the word or the word death metal, obviously. And all I saw that some people say that Onslaught because in one song of the demos from the Onslaught, they put death metal a song. That's completely normal. But for you, that you were there, that invented or moving the wheels of the death metal, because I just was a fan at that moment. I'm just reading. That's the only thing I can do at that moment. So, but
yeah.
you are there creating and reinventing the wheel because you are one of the biggest in the death metal now. So, do you think this concept that he invented, that the death metal word, or where for you, where it comes from this word death metal for you?
I don't really know where it came from, to be honest. It's just a word that we used to throw around. We just wanted to be different. There were so many different words. Everything was attached to metal, speed metal, death metal, old black metal, all sorts of stuff. Everybody wanted to create a different genre. So I'm not really bothered. I don't even care whether we call death metal or grind or whatever else. I really don't give a fuck. You can label it whatever you want, but no one has got the right to claim any kind of title to themselves. You don't. You can get called whatever you're called by your fans, and if they want to call me fucking death metal or whatever, I'm perfectly happy with that. But no one owns the right to say it. Now I have no idea where it really came from. I mean, it's the same as heavy metal. I mean, where did heavy metal came from? Where did that come from? Everybody says it was the British side, but who knows? It could have been the German side. It could have been the American side. It's not really important. It's just
Well,
what's important is people keep listening to it.
yeah, that is the most important thing. So, but the people all the times ask about this. I have a book that it's a book from US that they think they all invented the death metal or the death metal genre. That's a curious thing about this. Okay, we are very close to this interview, Terrence, and for
Yeah.
this topic, so you said one thing for me because I already noted this one all the time. This is things this is things like the British, Swedish, Finland, Brazilian, because Brazilian has a Sepultura, has Christian, that's a big sound in the world. And US all the time has these news, all the time, these personalities into the death metal around the world. It's very difficult to say each is the same. It's not, because the British scene has a different sound from the Brazilian scene or from the US scene, etc., etc. And for you recently, do you discover that there is a new country with a personal sound involved, or we are still like maintaining the great stones, like the great scene, Swedish, Finland, British, US, and the Brazilian, because that is the five more important scenes when we are talking about the death metal.
No, I think with computers and with the internet, I think a lot of bands are starting to sound a little bit similar. So you're getting bands from Brazil sound like they're Swedish. You're getting bands from America sounding like they're English. But
Mhm.
you will always have the core of the originals that came from Sweden. You'll always have the core of the originals that came from England, that came from Brazil, that came from everywhere else. So regardless of what everyone sounds like now, it's where it came from. The Brazilian sound will always be the Brazilian sound. Swedish sound will always be the Swedish sound. But there are more bands starting to sound like that now, and more power to them. It just means that we made people think, we made people listen. And
Mhm.
if there's a band from Chile that sounds like they could have come from Birmingham, then that's a nod on the head to us. If there's a band from Sweden that sounds like Death, then that's a nod to Chuck. The world's becoming smaller because of computers and internet. It's becoming smaller. I think it's a good thing. I think it's a good thing that everybody's getting into all sorts of stuff. But there'll always be a core that came from that country.
Okay, yeah, all the times for me it will say. But well, Darren, it was a pleasure to have to you today in this interview. Obviously it's a great pleasure to talk with you because we spoke 5 months, 5 years ago for the scriptures, and now we're speaking about this new album. It's a great pleasure all the time to have to you tonight again. So this album is a great one. I did my pre-order. Will arrived like 1 week ago. It's a great album for this. Perhaps do you want to add something to your Latin American fans that expect you return again, and obviously Metallic followers?
Yeah, I'd like to say a thank you to every single person that's following this, every person that comes to see us in Latin America. We're not doing this to be superstars. We're not doing this to make a lot of money. We're doing this because we believe in what we do. And the only reason we can do this is because of people like you. people like the fans, the people that buy the t-shirts, the people that turn up to the shows, the people that read the zines, follow the podcasts. Those are the most important people in these scenes, not the bands. The people that listen to it are the most important. And I want to thank each and every single one of them for their support. Without them, we're nothing.